What's up, guys? Melton here. Today we're going to be talking about tones and tuning. So let's jump right into what's going on with the drums first. Let's start with the snare drum. So this is an 8x14-inch copper snare drum. A lot of guys use 6.5-inch snares, but I like to use 8-inch snares, especially for worship stuff, just to help get a little bit more body out of the tone. And right now I've got no dampening. It's all the way loose. All the lugs are just finger tight. So right now I'm going to go around and just bring up the tension. Usually I'll do like one full turn at a time, and just make sure you go across from each lug. Typically you can feel when the tension on the lug is about the same. So when you feel it kind of get to that threshold, just kind of stop, move on to the one directly across from it. And in worship music, you typically want your snare drum to fit well in the mix, right? You don't want it too dark, too bright. You just want it to sit somewhere right in the middle where it's present, but it's not overbearing or it's not loud enough. So I like to hear what my snare drum sounds like with no dampening before I start tuning it up with all the O-ring and snares. So I just have the snares off, everything off, everything flat. So let's hear what this sounds like so far. So that sounds good. It's a little bit too low, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up maybe a quarter turn all the way around. And it's important too, if you make an adjustment on one lug, you don't have to necessarily do it on all the other ones, but it is important so that the tension of the head isn't off balance, because that can create some weird overtones as well. So let's see what this sounds like. It's a little bit closer. Probably come up just a little bit more. There, that's pretty much right where I kind of want to live. So now I'm gonna go ahead and just throw the snares on and see what that does to it. Yeah, it sounds great. So a lot of people, they actually tend to forget the snare strand is a big part of the sound. A lot of guys will just tighten it so much, and it just immediately chokes the sound. And we haven't changed any tuning. That's literally only because of the snare wires on the bottom. So it's important to make sure you keep those loose enough to let the snare resonate well and let the tone sing out a little bit. See, and that's a little bit too loose. So you always want to find a good happy medium. All right, now that I'm happy with where I'm at with the tuning, pitch, and the snare strand, I'll throw on this Evans ring and just a moon gel with it. And typically that gets me almost 80% of the way there. So let's hear what this sounds like. I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe I would come down just a little bit now that I've got some dampening on it, just for a little bit lower pitch. Let's hear what this sounds like. That's pretty much exactly where I would want to live for a worship setting on a snare drum. And then I'll also, just to make sure it doesn't drop too much, I'll take some of these lug locks and kind of place them just on the back, especially where the stick hits on most. When you're rim shotting all the time on the back, it tends to drop the tuning of these back lugs. So these just kind of help for it to stay in place. They're great for that. So yeah, pretty happy with that. As far as toms go, typically, again, in worship, you're gonna want something that is not too distracting. So right now we've got these toms tuned pretty low, mid to low tuning. And also it's important to note the intervals between the two of them, right? Like when you hit them together, they sound great together. You don't want your rack tom to be really high and your floor tom to be really low. Otherwise, it's gonna be almost like an octave situation happening. So yeah, these two intervals sound great together. How I get there is a lot of people tend to, they crank the bottom of the head. I actually like to be a little bit looser on the bottom. I feel like that lets the tom head breathe a little bit better. And then when it comes to the top, I just kind of find when the tension feels the best. Sometimes if the bottom is too tight, it doesn't leave enough room for you to make adjustments on the top and you get more of a floppy sound. So that's why I like to go a little looser on the bottom to leave more room to make adjustments on the top. Right now, we've got, again, a nice mid. This is gonna work. This tuning is gonna work perfect for a worship setting. Now, if you wanted to go a little bit higher, maybe just bring it up maybe a quarter turn, just to kind of see. Still sounds great. Now, this might fit better in a like more Hillsong, Young and Free type setting. See, now the intervals, they're not as in pitch with each other, so I'm gonna actually bring up the floor tom a little bit as well. Again, a totally different sound. This works for faster songs, maybe a little bit more pop genre stuff. Again, and if your snare drum doesn't fit with that, you can bring it up too as well. Typically, this tuning of a snare drum is going to work with almost anything, so it's a nice, just middle of the road, good tuning. And then for the kick drum, I feel like there's no like technical approach to a kick drum. For me, I just want to make sure that the attack feels great on the front side. So right now, I would say it's tight enough to where you're getting quite a bit of attack out of it, but then it's also not too floppy. Like if it's completely loose, you're gonna get some kind of weird attack going on. Right now, it just feels like it's a good pitch and a good attack. And then the front head, again, if it's too loose, you're gonna get some weird floppiness like going on. So you wanna make sure it's just tightened up a good amount, so that way it resonates well with the batter head. So I think as far as tuning goes, that's my general approach. Again, there's so many different ways that you can tune drums, but for worship, for me, this is what works really well. It's pretty quick, and you're able to get in and out of situations when you don't have a lot of time to tune. It works. This method works really well. Awesome. So let's jump into cymbals. My approach for cymbals is to have something that brings energy, but it's not too bright. Definitely more on the warm, dark sound. So I actually I use heartbeat cymbals. I really like them. I feel like they have a lot of wide variety of options. I guess we can start from right to left. Here I've got a 24-inch light jazz ride. I use it as a crash, and it works really well. It's nice and washy and dark. Here I've got a 24-inch epic ride. Again, like it's got enough stick attack, but it's also very warm and dark when I need to wash into it. Here I've got a 22-inch custom ride that I use as a left crash. It's a light ride. It's again it's nice and thin, so I can swell into it, and it doesn't make a whole lot of noise. You're not getting weird frequencies out of it. And then these are just two crashes that I put together: a 17-inch raw crash on top, and then a 17-inch epic crash on the bottom. Again, like the whole theme of all these is just really dark and warm sounds. So here's the hi-hats. So I feel like these cymbals work really well for what we're doing for worship stuff. You know, and if we're ever flowing and I want to maybe jump to this cymbal for a ride sound, or this one, they're all kind of similar, but just nice and dark, so that way they don't get in the way, or they're not a distraction in the mix. So yeah, I love using these cymbals. They sound great. Here's what they sound like in a groove context. So you can tell, like, the theme of the entire kit is just nice, warm, dark sounds. I've got the snare drum, which is peaking out just enough, the toms that fit really well with each other, and then the kick drum that has a nice attack and punch, and then the cymbals, they're different enough to where they complement each other. So I like to lean on more of a dark approach for what we're doing for this. Now, again, if you do more pop stuff, more upbeat stuff, you can go with a little bit smaller of a cymbal. These are all generally pretty big, but you could go with something smaller and even thinner. And even brighter to get more of like a faster, quicker attack sound. But for what I do for worship, I love to use nice, big, dark cymbals. So this is my approach to tones, tuning, all that stuff. So I hope that helps you guys and have fun with it.